just keep going. Just like keep trusting that like if you show up authentically and you're creating authentically, then what else is there? Like that's the coolest thing that you can do like in life is just show up as yourself. And for so many years I was like, I tried to hide who I was because I never felt totally accepted by being myself by people. You know, I really deeply wanted to be understood. And there comes a certain point in your life where that like you get a switch where it's like, oh yeah, of course I just need to nurture that authentic self and start showing up like that.
Hi, hello, and welcome to the Lives I've Lived podcast. My name is Megan Asa, and this is episode 7 with Jillian Siefert. Sometimes in life, there are unexpected twists and turns that happen, and they can be completely out of your control. And sometimes beautiful things come out of those unexpected plot twists. In this episode, Jillian shares about her unexpected journey to becoming a full-time artist. From the corporate world to creating from home, Jill shares the winding journey that is her life and how leaning into her authentic self changed everything. I hope you enjoy. Oh my gosh, Fitzy, I cannot with you. Fitz, I need you just to be cool.
It's good projection though.
I need you to be cool. This would be the episode though where like Fitz just meows the whole time because like you're such a big fan, it like wouldn't even matter. You're just like, I'm here for it. I'm here for the party. Jillian Siefert. Hi. Welcome to my living room and my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You have been in my living room many a time, but this is the first time you're on my podcast.
It is. Yes. It feels very lovely and familiar and new and exciting.
Yeah. Fitzy is also with us.
Yes, he is.
And he will most likely be meowing while we're recording this.
And I love it because he does have the voice of an angel and he is the best boy.
He really is so good.
He is.
He's just kind of loud sometimes. We'll see how he does. There was one episode I recorded with Jennifer, and it was so chaotic. He was meowing, and then he was chewing the cables, and then like his automatic feeder went off, and I was like, Jennifer, I am so sorry. This is utter chaos, and that's the downside of recording in my living room with my cat. But
well, he's having such a good time. It's like the best. He makes me very happy.
Well, thank you so much for spending time just with me and coming over here. I cherish your friendship so much. And I just think this is going to sound like I'm totally being over the top, but I'm being genuine when I tell you that pretty much every time we hang out, my heart is so full.
Oh.
Like, you just bring me so much joy. Your friendship is such a gift, and I always leave time with you just like encouraged and inspired, and I'm just so grateful for who you are and your friendship.
Well, don't make me cry. No, that I truly feel the same way, and I felt that way from like day one with you. That I consider myself an introvert, but I am an extrovert around the people who love me and who understand me, and you've always been that person to me. So right back at you.
Thanks. So kind of fun origin story for us. We met online.
We did.
We met on Instagram.
Yes.
I had to think for a second because I was like, did we meet on Bumble? It would have been hilarious if we met on Bumble BFF. But no, we met on Instagram. You started following me like randomly, right?
Yes. I think I was like looking for Columbus knitting or something like random. And I saw something gorgeous that you were working on. And yeah, I was like, well, this chick seems awesome. She knits. Her work is beautiful. She travels. Like she's doing all these fun things. So yeah, I lurked and then I followed.
You are so cute. And then I think like you recognize my apartment complex too, right?
Yes,
because it's like
I had a friend who lived there,
yes,
and
it's pretty. If you know it, it's pretty like easy to spot.
yes, yeah, and you made that place like so beautiful too. It was really wonderful. But yeah, our little Instagram origin story.
Yeah, and then like we just decided to meet up, and this was early on when I lived in Columbus, so like I was still very new to Columbus, didn't have any friends, just or if I did, I had very few. And I too was looking for, people and creatives, and a fellow knitter sounded awesome. And so we just like met up for coffee.
Yep.
And like kept hanging out.
Yeah, we just never stopped. Like, and those were so many just good green flags because you have great taste in coffee. You always have. And then we just like, we knitted together in a coffee shop. Like, and when I came home, I was like, I think I made a friend.
That's amazing.
And I was so happy because at that time in my life, I was particularly like I felt lonely, and I didn't really have a lot of friends because making friends in your 20s and 30s, like outside of college,
is so hard.
It's so hard. It's very, there's no like,
it's sad how hard it is, but like it's like worse than high school because you just basically have to go up to strangers as an adult and be like, "Hi, will you be my friend? I'm 30. Will you be my friend?" Like,
I promise I'm not weird.
Yeah, like it's just great. It's so hard to like meet your people when you're, established. I don't know why, but
yeah, no, it totally is. And that's why I think like being able to show up authentically, and that's something that I feel like I've always gotten from you, is that like when you are in a space, you show up as authentic and it like magnates people towards you. Aww. So that was, I was like, oh, we're going to be friends.
And we are.
And we are.
Many years later. Oh. So Jillian, if you were to give us a snapshot of what your life looks like today, what would that be?
Oh, my life today, I live a small, quiet, happy, colorful life in Columbus, Ohio. I live with my partner, Michael, and our two gorgeous cats, Sheldon and Delilah. Yeah, they're keepers, little weirdos, but keepers. We have a little house, and I make art every day, and just try to spread as much joy as I can.
Which you do such a good job of.
Thank you.
I love that about you. Well, I want to ask you a question I ask everyone who comes on, which is, looking back at your life, how many lives do you feel like you've lived?
It's been a whirlwind, and I feel like I've lived about 4 lives or so, 4 or 5 lives. It's always so hard to tell because we move so fast in a society that you move from one life to the next overnight sometimes, and it's hard to pause and look back and be like, oh my gosh, remember when I did that?
Yeah.
That thing. So
like we don't really realize it until we're like 4 or 5 lives in, and then we're like, holy cow, I did like all of this stuff
right
in a very short amount of time.
Yes. Lots of plot twists along the way that you just don't like see until you like take a step back and you're like, oh, this is different.
That's such a great question of like, are people taking the time to pause?
Just stop and check in with yourself. Yeah, yes. We value productivity so much in society that it's, I think, really hard to take a moment, slow down, and be like, wow, everything is so different than what it used to be, and this is great, or it's inspiring, more change or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of plot twists along the way that lead us to different points in our lives. And like, I think that we always arrive at those moments at the right time. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in like, man, this would have been a heck of a lot easier if I did this 15 years ago, 20 years ago or something. And it's like, no, like these kind of journeys, these like little diversions are so important. And there's always something to learn along the way, I think. Currently,
you are full-time artist.
Yes.
You're at home painting. but you had told me recently that you stopped painting for 15 years.
Yes.
That is a very long time, especially now that you are like a working artist.
Yes.
Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yes. It's been, I dropped a big part of myself that I loved and walked away from it for quite some time. And I think that sometimes there's a lot of, growth and change that needs to happen in those periods. And yeah, I used to paint all the time when I was younger, and it was kind of the thing that made me happy. I was always painting on like cabinets and walls and like making art when I was
your
younger.
Parents didn't care?
No, they were really encouraging of it.
Oh my gosh, what a gift.
They have my first and only mural in their garage.
That's incredible.
Yeah, my dad is like a fisherman, so I like painted these awful fish, like with giant bulbous eyes, and like it is horrible but truly like fabulous. I need to like archive it somehow, but
That's
yeah,
incredible.
it's like a 10-foot painting in their garage.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I used to, if it was like white, I was like, oh, it needs to not be white anymore.
Yeah.
and change that. And yeah, it was just always something that made me super happy. Like I was like, oh, what do you get Jill for Christmas? It's like, give her some paints or something. It was always something that made me really, really happy. And I feel like a lot of us always have like that urge to create too, and just be creative, whether that be writing or cooking or singing. Like there's just so many different avenues, but like we just have this urge to like put something out into the world that we can't necessarily articulate, but we can get it out there somehow. So yeah, it's been a while.
So what happened? Like you're at your home painting 10-foot murals of fish, and then you like took a huge pause. What happened?
Well, I was kind of slated to go to art school, and it was, I was 15 or so, and 15, 16 in high school. I was taking college classes, and like I was like, yes, I'm going to be an artist, and like literally had no game plan. Like I was just like, I'm going to make art.
Okay, but like what 15, 16-year-old has a game plan?
Right.
To be fair. Like
I'm 36 and I barely have a game plan.
Same.
So that's very true. So I was really like trying to push myself to go down this avenue, and I had just a big run-in with a mentor of mine, a teacher, and it wasn't, the run-in was something that just kind of squandered my spirit, I guess is like a way to put it.
Yeah.
Where you listen to adults who say one thing and then you stop believing in yourself and you really take that to heart. I think that kids are really impressionable, and like art is such a personal thing. So
and like vulnerable.
Right, exactly. It's hard to put things out there. So I just had a really bad situation with a teacher that I really respected, and I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to make art again because I'm really bad at it.
Oh, no.
And it was something that I had to really kind of work through and go through it the hard way and figure it out and get on like the other side of things. But a 15-year hiatus of not wanting to pick up a paintbrush, but finding because I still had that creativity that needed to go out. So I'm crocheting, I'm knitting, I'm sewing.
The fiber arts start coming out. Yeah.
We're creating something, just not necessarily painting. And it took me a while to get back into it because it was something that I didn't even want to touch, even though for my whole identity was creating art. And then one day I was like, all right, well, I just need to not do this anymore because somebody told me to.
Did your parents like say anything? Did they like notice when you stopped and like?
They did. But like there wasn't anything that like, it's so hard to repair that damage, I feel. And as a child, I think that it's really hard to not take things to heart. And when you have those like formative pieces of you rewired in your brain, that's really like, they were always like, you should get back into art. And it's so easy to be dismissive of that and just be like, well, did you see the scarf I made?
Yeah. I'm doing other things now.
Look over here.
Because my teacher crushed my spirit.
Right.
And told me I sucked.
No big deal.
Infuriating to me.
Yeah, that was, it was a big pause that was unexpected. So and I went from going to art school into majoring in psychology. And
that's a turn.
I was like, I guess I'll do this now.
What made you interested in psychology? Was there anything specific that you were like, oh, like I'm interested in this?
Yes. I think just like an innate urge to want to understand what makes people tick all the time. I mean, if we're being totally transparent, like I wasn't like super popular in like grade school and like always had a hard time, I think, relating to people or being understood by people. Yeah. And so like when I was like, oh, people study why you don't like, or you can learn things about people's like brain or like why people do certain things, because I think I was just always, I never understood why people like did certain things. And psychology was a way for me to try to put some logic to that, I think. But I love like learning what makes people tick. Like I want to get in there and understand the whys behind things. So I did that for a while, but.
And is psychology what led you into social work?
It is. Yes. I took a child abuse course. Actually, it was a social work course, and it was like probably one of the most emotionally challenging courses like I've ever taken. And it really like opened my eyes to, oh my gosh, there's so many people that just need help. And at that point in my life, that like if you asked me what I wanted to do with my life, I would have just said help people. And like I didn't really know what that looked like or what it meant, but social work was a way that I was able to channel that.
How long did you work in social work?
A couple months.
So not long. Not
long. It was a brief chapter in my life. I actually so I'm from Indiana and like moved to Ohio when a friend was like, hey, do you want to move into my like house? I need a roommate. And I was like, sure. Like I had never been to Columbus. And I was like, yeah, that's
a really brave thing
great.
To do.
It was totally different. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. And just was like,
well, hopefully the one girl was your friend.
Yeah, no, that's true. She was my friend.
You guys like worked out. Okay, good.
We were pals. Okay, yes, and so it wasn't like at least like living with a stranger or anything.
Sure,
that would have been actually horrible. I came to Columbus to have a job in social work. That's when I started looking for jobs in social work.
Okay,
and I started working in direct care with children in Columbus, and it was. Like I said, a brief chapter. I ended up having a child who had a behavior during one of my shifts, and it landed me in the emergency room, and was just like kind of a more traumatic experience. That
so they were like because they were violent towards you.
They were, yeah.
That's so hard.
It was, scary,
it was
challenging, and like sad because like what had to happen to make a child do that, so it was like every way you can look at it. It's like, oh, that was like horrible.
Yes, everything about it is a bummer.
It's super, super bummer. Yeah. So I that was my first 2 months in Columbus, month and a half in Columbus, I think. So
you're like, I'm off to a really good start.
Yeah, I love this city. And actually the night that I went into the emergency room, somebody got shot in the parking lot too. Like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing about it, but like I was like,
the ER?
yeah, like in the parking lot of the
hospital?
emergency room
Oh
of the
my
hospital at
gosh.
Riverside. And I was
Yikes,
just like,
Riverside.
what is happening? Like, I didn't.
And you're like, where did I just move?
I felt so like out of my element, and yeah, I was like, this was
no.
such a bad decision. Like, Columbus has been rough, social work has been rough.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I pivoted for a moment after
Sure.
that. And yeah, I made sandwiches at Potbelly Sandwich Works
Okay, yep,
for a brief stint.
Did you have a favorite sandwich?
I made like cheesy bread. I would bring in like my own garlic seasoning from home and like doctor it up.
I like that their stuff isn't even good enough. You had to like bring your own.
I'm cooking. Yeah, that was so I didn't really eat a ton of the things, but I loved taking home the bread at the end of the night. That was like, their bread is pretty supreme.
So how long did you do that?
About a year, actually. I was feeling like so unsafe, like in where I was, like emotionally, that it was a good reset for me to be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to get there. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to really continue being happy doing this. So
to me, when I hear that, and I try to like put myself in your shoes, I feel like I would be really discouraged. I mean, what was that like for you?
It was really frustrating because I was paying on my student loans with my Potbelly job, and like, no shade to that, but like, it wasn't what I was hoping for.
Sure.
Like you said, it wasn't in my game plan, and I felt really like kind of like a failure where I'm like, I put in my 4 years, I got my degree in air quotes, and and I was making sandwiches, and I had a run in where somebody was wearing a hat from my alma mater, and I was like, oh, I went there too, and they were like, oh. Great. Awesome
and
prospects.
You were here. Yeah, I love that.
So that was and that was like the first time it sunk in where I was like, oh, I'm this isn't like a great season to be in. But I really still enjoyed Columbus as like a city, and I think that the people in general like have been very welcoming and sweet, and like that's been the redeeming factor. And my mom had always kind of described it as like a cat that has their claws into a city just to be like, no, I'm staying here. Like, screw this. Like, everything is telling me to leave, but like I am buckling down and I'm gonna figure something out. And I just kind of eventually figured things out. It took me a while though.
Sure.
But
so how do you like get yourself out of that place where you're like, you know, you doing what you need, like seriously, no shame, like doing what you need to do, working up, like we're joking, but working at Potbelly is like paying off your debt, your student loan, but you're not living in what you know is your full potential. How did you like get out of that and go, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's the next step. Like, I can do this.
That's a great question. I think I didn't know the answer to that question for a really long time because I knew what I had to do, which was make money. And that pushed me into just getting a job, that it didn't have to be anything glamorous. So I was like, what's the best way to make money? It's like, oh, the scummy insurance industry is a great way to make money because there's very deep pockets in that industry. I think are all very socially aware of that now. And so I started looking in jobs in insurance, and I found a place, and I started being a consultant locally with like businesses and working in insurance. Super cool.
Some people I think it's cool.
That's true.
Everything's for someone.
I did meet somebody who like majored in insurance. That's
Okay.
apparently a thing you can do.
Okay.
It's like, you don't have any other interests?
And so when I met you, you were in the insurance biz.
I was.
And it was actually crazy because not only did we like randomly meet on Instagram and then decide, hey, we're going to be friends, but it turned out that like you had a connection to my place of work because of the like insurance that our company had. So you like knew one of my coworkers and it was just like totally crazy.
Yes.
Like, such a small world.
Yeah. I randomly knew your HR person.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah. We email all the time.
I was like, what in the world?
How is this even possible?
I feel like that's so Columbus though, isn't it?
It is. This is the biggest small town I've ever lived in. I swear, like the most random people know each other, or it's kind of bizarre actually. But yeah, I was doing insurance for a while, 10 years or so. Maybe like 11, maybe 12. It's
That's a long time.
a while.
That's a long time.
It's about almost the whole time that I was in Columbus, basically. After my stint at Potbelly, and did insurance, and I was a consultant for groups. And I did their medical, dental insurance, life insurance, all of that super fun stuff. I'm like, which is hilarious because like I am laughably not good at math either, and so much of insurance is like looking at numbers and like adding them together. And like I'm it's shocking to me that I was able to be competent at that job.
But you did really good. I remember you sharing like what's going on at work, and people really enjoyed working with you, and you like climbed the ladder a little bit, right?
I went from kind of being at the bottom of the ranks into more of a consulting role, and shocking to me as well. I think and this is kind of like where you like step back and you're like, oh my gosh, every piece of the puzzle, no matter like the plot twist or diversion, psychology was a really important piece of that, because I like became good or competent at least at being able to foster relationships with my clients and like understanding what their needs were, hopefully before they realized them too. So it made it for a really like successful relationship. And I love that, like genuinely getting to know people and feeling like I was helping people.
Yeah. So you're still doing that in a different way.
Kind of, yeah. It was just, and at a certain point, like I realized even though I was like helping them, I was still contributing to a broken system, and it made me just like feel icky about that, where it's like, wow, I really helped her today, and that was wonderful, but I don't love that this is how I gave the help. Like I wish that there was a better way to make somebody happy. So that I think that kind of ate away. Once the shiny parts of being like, okay, well, I feel good at my job, I feel competent, I know what I'm doing, I understand this, and then it's like, wait, do I want to understand this? Like, do I want to be good at this? Like, is this how I want to spend my energy? And like when we like have a chance to kind of slow down, and really 2020 and like COVID and being able to like force a slowdown was a big way to just be like, wow, wait, I need to kind of reevaluate. This isn't like a system that truly cares about people, and I want to care about people.
And you do care about people. Like who you are as a person is a very caring person. I could totally see how you'd want that to be also aligned with like basically your core values and who you are.
Definitely. Yeah, it was like I would kind of just go out of my way to like, even if everybody was having like a bad day, or if it's just like meetings, I'd be like, I made something. Look at this silly little picture I drew, or like look at this little cupcake I made, or just like random little spurts of like my authentic self. I'd like trickle into the workplace and to like the three people I knew that like liked seeing those like things.
Someone else is like, sorry, I'm too busy insurancing.
Yeah.
You can't deal with your cupcakes and drawings right now.
I am insurancing. Yeah, I think that was like a big thing, because those kind of conversations with people, if I was like, look at this silly little picture I drew, or, you know, I made a greeting card or something, like when I had a chance to slow down, I was like, that's what made my day happy, not the 35 meetings that I had or that I cleared my inbox or something. Like, I was genuinely excited about talking to my coworker about what they were cooking for dinner or like something like that. So it really forced me to slow down and be like, what am I doing? I'm getting a paycheck, but like, at what cost? Because I just don't, it's not fulfilling to me. And I really, really wanted it to be.
Hey guys, did you know that the Lives I've Lived podcast is a one-woman operation? Outside my full-time job, I produce, record, edit, create, and manage content for the show. It is a lot of fun, but it also takes a lot of time. So, if you have been enjoying the podcast and are looking for a way to support it, look no further. You can keep my creativity flowing in caffeine with one easy click. Down in the show notes, click support the show. This takes you to a page where you can easily gift me a latte. Above all else, it means so much knowing that you are all listening to this passion project. So thank you. I can't wait to keep sharing even more content. I hope you stay tuned as we continue building a community and sharing stories from the lives we've lived. Yeah.
So I made another plot twist happen, I guess.
You
or
did.
Manifested it.
You manifested it, because how the next course of life shifted for you is quite fascinating story.
Yes. So when I started working in insurance, I had worked at several different firms along the way, and then they always did background checks, but apparently not great ones. And I got to like my third insurance firm that I was working with, and they did a background check on me, like, no big deal. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, you've worked in insurance before for years. Every person you've worked for have done background checks on you.
Yes.
Cleared with flying colors.
Fingerprints and all.
And then now this is like what, your third company?
Yes. Yeah. And they, they hired me and I started working, and I'm like, well, this is great. I'm going to really like it here. Like, I've welcome flowers, and there's like a team of people. Like, it was really wonderful.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey, you never graduated college.
That is like, so wild.
What? Because that's like super ironic. I've been paying on my college loans for a really long time. I'm sure I graduated college.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't.
So what did that even mean?
I apparently was 3 credit hours short of graduating technically, and somehow just escaped the system.
Nobody flagged it.
I didn't get an email about it. Like, nobody. I had the cap and gown. There are pictures of me, like, holding my,
fake diploma.
The fake diploma.
That they give you.
It was a fraud.
But your real one never came.
And I had moved here so shortly after graduation on a whim who is framing their college degree? You better believe I do have it framed now, though, so I won't eat those words.
Did they hire you still, even though you had these, 3 looming credits that you never knew about?
Yes. Yeah, they did. I was like, what happens? And they were like, well, you need to go back to college. Okay. What does that mean? So they could be an elective course.
Okay.
So I had finished all the hard,
you did all the hard things.
Cognitive psychology.
Yes.
Checked. I did all the hard I even took a math course. So I had an elective, which could have been astronomy or anything, and which infuriated me even more. So I tried to take the most absurd class that I could. I was like, what can I do that's just a big F you to the man? And I'm like, I'll just go to art school. Like, this is fine. I'll take a drawing class. And so I enrolled back in college.
Many years later.
I was supposed to graduate in 2011. So 2017, I enroll back in college to get my degree, and I take a drawing 101 class at night because I still had to work my job. And so
thankfully they hired you.
They needed me to get my drawing class done before I could sling insurance. So I took a drawing class, and then I was like, man, I really liked this. Like, I missed this, and it felt so private. Like, there was just like a lot of adults in the class, and if you've ever taken a drawing class, a lot of the times you're spaced out and you sit in a circle a lot of the times. I just kind of felt like I was in my own world. You have a big, like, 3-foot little drawing pad, and you're just doodling away, and like, to have that kind of freedom, be like, nobody's watching me, nobody's critiquing me, nobody's telling me that that's not good. Like, it was freeing.
Was it like kind of redeeming for you?
It definitely was. It was challenging to me just to make the decision to do it, I think. But once I was there, I was like, wow, I really missed this, and I just needed to, like, keep nurturing that. And, like, the way that the other students in the class would talk about my work, because you'd have to hang up your work and people could give their 2 cents, that made me so nervous because of just being like, oh my God, they're going to tear it apart, and this is so scary. And feeling supported by my peers, like, the feedback was always so warm and safe and just, like, what I needed to hear. Nobody wanted to, like, break you down at all. And in art space, like you were saying earlier, like, it is a vulnerable thing to have to do that. And so it was my elective class at CCAD night course that really made me just feel like, wow, I want to, I guess, do this a little bit more. With that I sought out, like, a bit of, like, talk therapy about it too, because, like, it was like a more or less like an emotional trauma that I had to kind of work through to be like, what I'm creating is worthy of being seen and, like, should be shared. And that was, I needed to kind of straighten those things out in my head, I think, and talk therapy helped tremendously with that, to just kind of rewire my brain to be like, well, I have this passion for it, but I'm scared to share it. So I was able to kind of work through some big challenging parts of my life that I would have never confronted if I didn't have to go back to college.
So it was kind of a blessing in disguise.
Definitely. A plot twist that was
so
necessary.
Wild.
Absolutely wild. I'm so grateful for it. There were opportunities for the universe to, like, figure that out for me or help me, like, solve that problem earlier, but it needed to take time. Right? Needed to brew or heal or whatever, kind of alchemy has to happen. And it just happened at the right time. And I didn't realize how thirsty I was for it until it happened. I was like, oh, I'm making art again suddenly. Still making it just for myself. And I think maybe I sent you a few greeting cards here and there, like little like things.
Seriously, you're so, it's like almost upsetting how talented you are.
Please.
And not in, like, a jealous way, just in, like, what human is allowed to have so many gifts? I don't know. But I remember you would just, like, give me a sweet gift or a card or something so little, but it was, like, always so beautiful. And then, like, sometimes you would randomly, like, bake me bread.
Oh, yes.
And it was, like, seriously, if anyone bakes me bread, it's, like, the kindest gift. Better than any gift you can give me. Homemade bread is, like, such a gift to me. And, of course, it's, like, delicious and like it's all crusty on the outside and soft on the inside, and just like everything you did and made, I just felt like everything you touched just like beauty just came out of it.
Well, that is very sweet of you to say. I mean, there's a lot of sincere like things that have ended up in the trash that I'm like, this is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Or a lot of
what artist doesn't feel that way though?
I agree. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people just in general are just like, especially even with like knitting, being like, well, now I have to rip the whole thing out because I made a mistake. Like,
dude, I don't have time for that. I'm so impatient when it comes to knitting. Like, I'm patient enough because the practice of knitting is a patient art form. But like, if my mistake isn't detrimental to the pattern, it's staying in there. It's just a part of the story. I'm not ripping stuff out. Ain't nobody got time for that. Like, it's just part of it now.
It's now a different life lived for this sweater that I'm making.
Exactly.
It's beautiful. And I can cover it with a pocket later
100%.
or something.
Put a patch over it. It's fine.
Yeah,
there's a character.
Yeah, right. And I feel like it's so easy to, when like you walk over, like especially I feel like with you and I, because I'd come over even today, like, you know, like covered in little knits. Like if you were to be like, oh, I love it, then my first thing that I said was like, yes, but it's not as good as what you make, and it fits me kind of weird on the back. And
isn't that terrible how you do that? You freaking made a sweater. Like, let's celebrate that.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like what we were talking about in the beginning, where it's like if we just slow down and be like, oh, this used to be just string, and now it's keeping me warm.
More than that, it used to be like on a sheep.
Right.
It used to be like fluff on a sheep, and now you're like wearing this beautifully crafted sweater.
Yes. And we're so far removed from a lot of the origin stories of things that we consume visually and elsewhere. Like there's a lot of stories to be told, even in just the clothing that we wear, and being able to recognize that whole piece, I think just makes having a sweater like this so special. So yes, it's I think it's really easy to critique what we're creating and putting out there. But you've always been a very safe space for me too. Make and share things, and I've always been grateful for that.
So, this crazy didn't know I didn't graduate college situation happened. So you rectified it, took the class, really was like, oh snap, this is something I'm so passionate about. But then a minute ago you said you still kind of just like kept it to yourself. Mm-hmm. How long did you do this like underground artwork? Or did you like slowly start to come out and be like, no, I can show this to people? Like this is...
Yeah, like a good 5 years, 5-6 years, around 2022 was when I was just finally like, okay, like I'm going to make an Instagram for my art, and I'm just going to do it. And I did it in a way that I didn't really tell people about it. Like I wasn't really sharing it with people. I was kind of nervous, and I felt nervous when friends of mine would see it and like get to know this other side of me, or people who've only known me to do insurance. Like suddenly they're like, what the heck is she doing now? Like this is what is happening. So I felt incredibly insecure about it and just scared, but doing it scared is kind of such an important thing, and it eventually felt empowering to me, but I was petrified for at least the first year and a half of just, why am I doing this? There's like, nobody's looking at this. Nobody wants to see what I'm making. I don't even know what I'm making. Like I didn't really have a vision, or, I didn't feel like I had a complete body of work. Everything was very unpolished, and I was like, well, here it is.
Which is so commendable, because for people like myself, and maybe you can relate, who kind of like we have standards in our mind on what things maybe should be, or the potential of what they could be. And sometimes it feels like when you have an idea or you want to start something, if you don't start out of the gate at that level, then like what are you even doing?
Right.
Why are you even doing it? Like I know I feel that way a lot with creative things. Doing it scared is a really easy thing to say and not an easy thing to do. And so I definitely commend you for being like, yeah, I'm going to like show people that I do this and like put it out in the world. And like, that's amazing.
Thank you. It didn't feel great. I felt like I was absolutely nuts for doing it. And
Do you have like imposter syndrome?
Totally. I feel like I definitely have a perfectionist mindset.
Sure.
And that for sure, like it's so easy to sit back and be like, what am I doing? This is nuts. And then just being able to check yourself with that, being like, just do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And so just being able to kind of touch myself on that and be like, all right, just keep going. Just like keep trusting that, like, if you show up authentically and you're creating authentically, then what else is there? Like, that's the coolest thing that you can do, like, in life, is just show up as yourself. And for so many years, I was like, I tried to hide who I was because I never felt totally accepted by being myself by people. You know, I really deeply, deeply wanted to be understood. And then, you know, there comes a certain point in your life where that, like, you get a switch where it's like, oh, yeah, of course, I just need to nurture that authentic self and start showing up like that. And that's why, and today in my practice, when I'm making my art, I really try to show what like people call the ugly phase, which we need to rebrand. This is like a terrible like name for it, but like
it's just like the middle.
It is at the beginning of something beautiful, like especially with social media. It's so easy to show
the finished product.
Yeah, look at this gorgeous thing, and it's perfectly framed and like gorgeous, and like we don't. When you look at things like that, it becomes really easy to get in your mind to be like, oh my gosh, well, if I'm not making stuff like that, I'm just like in a little home studio, which is a mess, by the way. Like I create in complete chaos, and I'm never gonna have the aesthetic step-by-step process videos. Like and I don't think that's important if that's not something that's important to you, you know, like as a person. And everybody's different. And I admire the people who can do that. I simply cannot. And once I got over that boundary of being like, I don't have to. That's not the standard. Like, I like to consume it and it's beautiful and marketable, but that's not who I am. So I'm just going to try to share as much of the dirty, like incomplete, wonky parts of it, because that's what I needed to see in 2022 that, you know, pushed me to get into art, to be like, oh yeah, I can show it half done and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, even, you know, I watch a lot of content that has to do with like home design or like DIY stuff. And the most encouraged I end up being is when you can have those Me Too moments of like, oh, your house gets crazy messy because life happens and then it's stressful. Yeah, me too. Those are the like, I feel like the beautiful parts of life that you're like, I don't have to be perfect.
Right. Yes. Those are the parts that I think are always going to be the most interesting parts. And it's so crazy to me that those are the parts that we want to hide, like, because those are the little nuggets that I think
those
are
the
treasures.
Gifts, you guys.
Right. Yes. Those are the parts I want to get to know about people, or that's, you know, back to psychology. It's like, what makes you tick? Like, what are those little pieces that, like, what are those little tiny gears that all add up to the greater whole? There's so much that goes into every single person, and like, the parts that we're most afraid of sharing, there's somebody out there who is feeling the exact same way and like yearning to feel understood. And it's just that's why social media can be great. Like it has its downfalls, but it is really wonderful to feel understood by a mass of people that like I would never have met, you know, 300 people. I don't even really like leaving my house. So it's really encouraging when you're like, wow, I feel understood, or I feel enjoyed. And don't we all just kind of want that kind of community in a way? It's So social media has been helpful in that way to just feel more connected by people, to be like, wow, we're all weird and broken and awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Today, you're like a full-time artist.
Yes, I
Insurance
am. That's
no
crazy.
longer. You're a full-time artist. That is bonkers in like the best way. I mean, I know there's a lot of creatives out there who like that's their dream, and I know it's really hard, and I think it's so cool that you are able to do that. How has that journey been?
Yeah, thank you. It was honestly rocky in the beginning. It's another plot twist was that when I was working in insurance, I was very unexpectedly laid off from a job that I thought I would be in for forever. Like I had just kind of been like, oh, this is what I do now, and this is how I make money, and I'll forge this path forward. And I literally said to a friend, the only way they're going to get rid of me is if I get fired or laid off. And like those words like left my mouth. And then maybe like 2 months later, I was laid off in a mass layoff. And it was one of those things where you got an email, and so it was.
It was just like you were in the mass of people that they're like, okay, sorry, bye.
Yeah, it was almost like names out of a hat. And which, honestly, like is fine. Like it probably would have been more cathartic to have pissed somebody off enough to have gotten the boot. But again, that was something I needed to kind of like work through that. So I went from, being the breadwinner to having no bread. And that was,
gone.
Like it's when you're shook like that from a really foundational part of your life, it is jarring to say the least.
Scary.
It is. To slow down and not have like a 9 to 5 and just like, okay, well, who am I? How do I enjoy my days? How do I want my days to look? And like, how can I make money to live? Yeah. And I had none of those answers for like a really long time.
That's so hard.
It was really hard. And like now today, when I reflect upon it, it was really freeing because I was able to write in a blank book, and I was, thankfully very encouraged by my partner, who was just like, what, you love doing this. Why don't you just try to do it? I believe in you. Like, I love your art. And like, what do you mean? Really? So I just, I just made a decision at a certain point after a lot of tears. I was just like, you know what? It's kind of now or never.
Your thing right now is tiny art.
Tiny art, yes.
So fun.
Very fun. Everybody likes something tiny.
And, I didn't realize there was such a market for, like, miniatures, but there is people love things that are small.
They do. Well, everything's so much cuter when it's tiny.
It's so true. And honestly, it's crazy impressive, the stuff that you put out. Like, in general, it's just beautifully done. But once you realize how incredibly small it actually is, the impressive level just goes up by like 10. You're like, did you have little tiny mice come help you? Like, how did you craft this actual painting that's like the size of a quarter? I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They're very tiny. Yeah. I started evolving into small art kind of because I had like trust issues. I was so doubtful of myself, right?
Yeah.
Even when I was like making and creating my art, I had this in the back of my head that I couldn't like waste my products, right? I didn't want to waste a canvas. I didn't want to waste the paint. And I would be like, oh no, that's the good watercolor paper. I don't want to paint on that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, if I make it small, it's fine. I only waste like a little corner of it, and like that's all right. And so like I started painting tiny, and then I was like, oh, I kind of like it, and because I love getting lost in the sauce, kind of with the detail work, and with the smaller like work, you can do that while still having limited like space to fill. So it's a way where I can get really detailed, but not necessarily work on a painting for 14 years.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
done.
Totally.
So yeah, I started making just tiny art out of like trust issues. And
but it's worked out really well for you.
Yes, it has. It's been quite nice. Yeah, they've evolved. I call them my mini masterpieces because they're like 1/2 inch to 7 by 7 inches, and I hand make frames because nobody makes tiny frames.
Right.
Like Michaels will make like a 2-inch frame sometimes. So that's how I started making my own frames and just seeing like, fine, I'll make them myself. And I'm able to really control the process. Perfectionist mindset. I make everything in small batches. I make like 15 frames at a time and mold them and trim them by hand and paint them by hand, seal them, and make these little tiny pieces of art that go inside. And I use to frame everything. I even use scraps from a local framer because her scraps are perfect for me because I just have tiny.
I watched one of the videos where you showed how you like finished off the back.
Yeah.
And you use like the fancy finisher paper
that
you're talking about. And I was like, the amount of detail, like even though it's so tiny, it's done so professionally. It's seriously like somebody took a beautiful piece of art and then like zapped it with like a miniature gun and it just like shrunk down. Like it really is very, very cool.
I appreciate that. You're so sweet. I spent a lot of time trying because I wanted it to be like a good piece of art, you know, and I think that especially with just like life and society, a lot of us are in smaller spaces than we want to be. And I feel like everybody deserves to have art that brings them joy in their house, even if it's just like a tiny little piece, you know, that there's a lot that we can do to enjoy the whole process. And I love being able to do the entire process in my little home studio with my 2 tiny cats, like begging for attention while I'm trying to, you know, make these little tiny pieces of art. It's so special to me that people even want my art in the first place. And to know that like I'm happy when I see other people happy about my art. It's like, there is not anything better in life than seeing somebody be like, oh, they're so tiny. I love them. And I also think that like I'm feeling like I always kind of wanted to be understood by people.
Yeah.
With my art, you know, if you ever go to like the Columbus Art Fest or anything, like you're walking around and you can kind of walk down the alley and be like, oh, that's pretty, that's pretty, that's pretty. You have to get into my booth to even know what I'm doing because like they're so tiny. And like to know that people have to step in, you have to get right up in its business and be like, oh my gosh, that's a tiny little flower in a perfect little vase. Oh my gosh, is that a Corningware teapot? It's like, yes, it is. It is. Yes, it's a daisy. Like, yes, it's. So that has been, it's fulfilled a bigger piece of me emotionally than I ever anticipated it to, because I feel like people are like coming into my space and understanding me and like connecting with me. I love that intimacy with my audience and just the shared connection. Like this season of my life has been so rewarding and has healed so many of those, like, you know, wounds that you have in childhood where you're like, nobody wants to get to know me. Like, nobody likes me. It's so hard to make friends. And it is all of those things, but also when you start showing up authentically and people just genuinely want to get up in there and be like, what's going on? What are you doing? This is so little. So it's been really rewarding to kind of take this left turn into a life that I was not anticipating. I've met all these people who were quite literally a lot of the times competing against one another for the same things. You know,
Yeah.
we're applying to the same festivals or the same grants or the same galleries. And every single person that I have met has been so supportive and like genuinely want me to succeed. And to have that with your peers, I am like so here for it because
Yeah.
there's enough for everybody. Like
Yeah.
you know, and just being able to have that organically happen in this life has been a really big, wonderful surprise for me. So,
Oh, I love that. So, Jillian, if people are interested to check out your awesome art, whether online or in person, where can you send them?
well, I go by the name of Jillian Renee Art on my website, social media. I'm also at Haley Gallery in New Albany, and she has a show coming up that is the Best of Haley Gallery 2025, and I have a piece in that show.
So cool.
Yay! I'm also in Hammond Harkins Gallery, which is downtown, and I'll be in a show. They just moved locations and have this wonderful new space. So it is just absolutely brilliant. They're going to have an opening show in February or March. So
Very
more
cool.
details if people, follow me on the little social media apps. I probably post most things on Instagram, but yeah, I'm around Columbus and hopefully we'll pop up on local shows here and there. But yeah, that's where you can find me online.
Love that. Thank you so much for hanging out today.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you for
You're
wanting to
just
hear
a
it.
delight. You're a delight.
You are a delight. Truly, this has been really wonderful. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. If you're interested in checking out Jillian's beautiful work, definitely head down to the show notes to find links to her webpage and socials. If you are a Columbus native, go check out Haley Gallery in New Albany. I was able to go to the opening show of her Best of 2025. Seriously, such beautiful work from local artists. If you want to catch Jillian at Hammond Harkins Gallery, there will be an opening show coming up in February or March. So definitely hang tight for the details there. Thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, thank you for being a part of the sharing of these stories and the telling of the lives we've lived.